Welcome to Confessions of a Parent Coach. I'm Coach, mother of four, and potty talker, Ann Kaplan. This is the podcast where I confess something from my own parenting and coaching life, teach a lesson around it, and answer your questions. Even we parenting experts are far from perfect, and the real magic happens when we get down with all that imperfection. We get into the gritty side of parenting here, so earbud up and dive in.
Welcome into another episode of the podcast, everybody. I'm excited to be here with you again this week, talking about codependency. Oh my gosh, what a hot button buzzword. I feel like everyone's just like throwing it around left and right. And does anyone really know what codependency means? And is there anyone on the planet who isn't codependent? And what does that even look like? This whole week is about codependency. So if you're on my email list, you got an email from me on Tuesday that was kind of just talking about what is codependency. And I'm going to go deeper into it in the podcast this week. So this is like almost kind of getting at the crux of the nugget, the like core little, ember that the flame of all of our self growth tends to stem from, especially in Western societies. I would say, especially in the US, our ideas about love and relationships are so unhealthy and so actually codependent. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So, I'm actually going to keep my confession until later in the podcast because it's going to be a really silly confession for me to tell you about my own codependency if you don't know what codependency is, or if you think you know, but you have maybe a more pop psychology idea of what it is or whatever. So to really understand what codependency is, we really have to go even before codependency develops. So we need to talk about like your sense of self. And there's a huge sort of beautiful overlay between this concept, this psychological concept of codependency and the Enneagram, believe it or not. What a surprise. How did I make it like 30 seconds into the podcast before I brought up the Enneagram? And why I say that is because the way codependency develops is the way that almost all personality traits develop. And it comes from, the degree to which we have our needs met in childhood and we receive security and attunement in childhood. So let's talk about this kind of sense of self. Your inner knowing that you're okay in this world, that's kind of what we mean when we say your sense of self. Might not be exactly what we say when we're using Enneagram language or IFS language. So the Enneagram or IFS would say yourself is your sort of your essential nature, your higher self, your healed whole self. Some people might even call it your soul or your essence or something like that. And that's not it's definitely not contradictory to the sense of self that we're talking about now in psychological terms. It's just maybe a little bit more esoteric and maybe even spiritual than the way that we talk about self when we're talking about codependency. So when we're talking about the sense of self here, we're talking about this just kind of inner knowing that you are okay, your sense of like being in the world, whole and healed and complete and fine. So you can see that they really aren't contradictory concepts at all. It's just that this conversation today is going to be a lot more of a terrestrial conversation than it might be if we were going down the direction of the Enneagram or internal family systems. But at any rate, that sense of self, that inner like wholeness and completeness is kind of what creates your building blocks for being able to go out into the world and form relationships and just feel okay in those relationships. And how we form that sense of self. Well, first of all, you come into the world with a fully intact sense of self already. But the way that you can keep and grow and deepen and maybe make more conscious that sense of okayness, that inner selfness and wholeness and completeness, the way that we maintain that and deepen it and become more conscious of it as our personality progresses and our child development unfolds comes from having our needs for security and attunement met in childhood. And so to the degree that you did have that met or not met, that's kind of the degree to how codependent you're going to become. And I'm going to keep going with this so you'll see what I mean. So when we don't have that inner okayness, I'm going to kind of talk about the maybe more extreme end of the spectrum because it illustrates the point so much more clearly. So let's say you just did not have your need for security met. You didn't receive attunement from the adults in your life. You really just didn't have your needs met, and you kind of had to parentify yourself. You become parentified so that you can raise yourself in certain arenas, at least. So let's say that that's what happened. Without that inner okayness, we start to look outside for it. It's not inside us, but we really want that. We're all looking for that sensation of being whole, healed, okay in the world, like everything is good in and of ourselves. We all want that feeling, but we don't have it inside. The natural thing that happens is we start to look for it outside of us. We start to give ourselves a sense of okayness from other people's emotions or other people's behaviors. And when those things seem good and reassuring, we feel okay. And when they don't feel good or reassuring, we don't feel okay. So, in other words, we are codependent. That is what codependency means. So, you can hear now that I'm kind of talking about this, probably we're all codependent to some degree, right? How many of us feel totally equally satisfied when our partner is angry with us as when they're happy with us? That's kind of a hard thing to cultivate, right? I don't think there's anyone who can say 100% that that's how they feel. So we all have that, codependency to some degree. Because I don't know anybody, because here's the funny thing, right? Is it possible for a parent to fully 100% of the time meet their child's needs for security and attunement? The answer to that is no. It is absolutely not possible, which means that everybody is living on a spectrum of having their needs unmet in childhood. Some of that is very minor. And so that person might be less codependent. And some of that is very extreme. And that person might become extremely codependent. But all of us have had the experience to some degree or another of not having our needs met instantaneously from the second we came earthside until the day we left our parents' home. That doesn't exist. So that means that everybody on this planet has some degree of codependency. Okay. So, okay, let's go further with that and explore, like, what does that even look like? So now we know the definition, right? It's like looking for the world outside of us, whether the people are outside of us or situations outside of us, the emotions and behaviors of the people around us to give us a sense of okayness. Well, what does that really look like? One of the things that it looks like is this illusion. Codependency gives us the illusion or the facsimile of helping other people. It gives us the illusion that we're helping others when we're really just trying to help ourselves. So if I only feel okay when you're happy with me, I might do all of the things that I think will make you happy with me, including being helpful, agreeing with you, giving you what you want, not defying you, all of those things to make you happy. And you could look at that and say, wow, that person is just so helpful and they're giving of themselves so much to, the person that they're in relationship with. But the whole reason why I'm doing that, it's not really for you. It's so that you'll be happy so that I feel safe. I'm really doing it for me. And the idea of not doing that is probably really, really scary to me because it means that you might be unhappy with me and then I will feel unsafe. Codependency is the fool's gold of love. Think about all the examples of this. We do someone a favor just so we can feel their appreciation. We're agreeable so we can avoid feeling rejection or creating conflict. We fix other people's problems so that we can feel satisfied and in control. We lecture our kids so that their aggravating behavior changes instead of learning how not to be aggravated by their behavior. You can see how all of it is about, I need the world around me to be a certain way or else I can't feel okay. And that is what codependency is. And if you're in a relationship with somebody who has a lot of codependency, you can feel it almost as this like need. It's sometimes the way I describe it is it almost feels like you're getting too close to a black hole because they need so much from you to help them feel okay that it feels like a burden. Now, you can talk about the codependency of the person who feels burdened. If they weren't codependent, it wouldn't be a problem that this other person had all these unmet needs and that they wanted all of this stuff. So if I'm in a relationship with a super codependent partner and I feel that sense of neediness from him, I feel this feeling that you know, they're looking to me for satisfaction and completeness and happiness and they need me to be a certain way or else they're not going to feel that way. I can sense that stuff from them. If I'm also codependent, I'm going to feel really upset about that, probably way more than if I weren't, because I'm going to feel like, well, great. So now I have to do this and this so that you'll be happy. See how it's like this, it's like a kind of this like snake eating its own tail or something like that. It's this feedback loop that's really toxic. Now, if I'm not codependent or if I'm less codependent, I have a small degree of that, or I've worked on myself so that I have a small degree of that, I can feel tons and tons of compassion for my partner who has this empty hole inside of him that he's trying to fill with me. But I don't actually feel a sense of obligation or onus or responsibility about that um, need that he has. And I can just love him and I can feel sympathy and empathy for him and tell him so much that I'm so sorry that he's unhappy without feeling the need to give him what he wants from me. I can, if that's my truth, I can give that to him because it exists and it's real, but I don't have to. And so you can see how there's a difference. And truly, the difference between codependency and what I'm describing as interdependency, the difference between those two things is very subtle because on the outside, the behaviors could be the same. But on the inside, it's very different. The example I always give is between me and my husband. So Mike loves pomegranates. He loves them every winter. Anytime I go to the store, he doesn't just want me to buy a pomegranate. He wants me to go to Costco and come home with a flat of pomegranates. And by the next time I go to the grocery store, they will all be gone. He loves pomegranates. When we were earlier in our relationship, when our marriage was much more codependent than it is right now, I would go to the grocery store and I would buy him pomegranates and I would buy them sometimes with a chip on my shoulder, like, oh, gotta get pomegranates. I freaking hate these things. Every time he eats them, he leaves the carcasses all over the house. There's the juice gets on stuff and it stains. And what a prince. I have to do this or he'll be sad and blah, blah, blah. So I was doing it, but I was really waiting or looking for this feeling of like, okay, I took care of my wifely duties. So now you can't be mad at me so that I can feel satisfied that I'm being a good partner to you. The whole reason why I was doing it was so that I could feel complete as his partner. I fulfilled the requirements of my definition of what a good partner is. And that's someone who gets you pomegranates at the grocery store. It wasn't really for him. It was really to placate him so that I could feel less sense of obligation or unfinished business in my marriage with him. Even though it's just a stupid freaking pomegranate, this is true. We have done so much work on ourselves and on our marriage and all of that stuff. And guess what? I still buy pomegranates for Mike. Every time I go to the grocery store in the wintertime, I will buy him pomegranates. But guess what? I don't actually give a shit if I buy him pomegranates, and I don't give a shit if he cares that I bought him pomegranates. I don't care if he's happy about it. I don't care if he's sad. Not because I don't care about Mike, but because it's none of my fucking business. I do it because I love him. And when I'm at the grocery store and I see a pomegranate, it makes me think of him. And it's something that I can do because I know that it brings him joy, but I'm also completely unattached to whether or not it actually does bring him joy. And if I come home and he says, oh, I actually didn't want pomegranates today, so now we have all these pomegranates. Thanks a lot, lady. Or if he doesn't eat all of them and they go bad, or they turn out not to be good pomegranates or whatever, how it would go down, I feel equally completely fine with myself. And if there, for some bizarre reason, it gave him negative emotions instead of positive emotions for me to show up at our house with pomegranates, that would be fine because I am not dependent and attached to Mike's feelings about me, Mike's feelings about his life, Mike's feelings about pomegranates. It all is irrelevant to me because it's none of my business. And I am perfectly happy, whole, healed, and satisfied in myself as a human being, whether or not Mike likes me. But from the outside, looks exactly the same. Bought pomegranates 20 years ago, buy pomegranates today. Looks the same. Most of my clients who are working on codependency, we have to have a pit stop in independency, where it's like, I'm not buying you pomegranates anymore because I'm me and you're you. And if you want pomegranates, go get them yourself because you're not my job. It can feel really mean, but until you can do the work to recreate your sense of self in a healthy way, kind of make up for the needs that you didn't get met when you were a kid, almost reparent yourself in a weird way so that you now have that sense of inner okayness. Until you can do that, it is impossible to show up in a marriage or a relationship or a parent-child relationship not codependently. So codependence is a slippery thing that we talk about, but at the same time, we can feel it or we can notice it. So now let's talk about what happens if we don't do this stuff. Okay, well, maybe you have like a passive aggressive, maybe eye rolly, really resentful marriage. Well, that's not great, but so what? But the plot thickens when we understand that we can pass codependency on to our kids. Because if we're codependent, like I said, codependent people, we seek that inner okayness from the world outside of us, from the people outside of us, from the relationships outside of us. And guess who is a person in our life that we have a relationship with? Our kid. So codependent parents seek safety and that sense of okayness through their relationship with their child, in addition to all their other relationships. That child now becomes an outside person on which their inner feeling of safety depends. And now the parent is codependent. The parent is dependent on the child. Well, guess what? Your child came into this world dependent on you already. So instantaneously, a codependent parent has a codependent relationship with their child because the child is already dependent on you from the day they are born until they mature or individuate away from you. So the parent can't help. A codependent parent can't help. This isn't an intentional thing that we're doing. And by the way, since all of us have a degree of codependency, all of us are doing this to some degree. And it's so sad to think about that, but it is true. So the codependent parent can't help but relate to their child's emotions and behaviors as existing to fill that inner void. So when you do something that is, against the rules, if I'm a codependent parent and you're my kiddo, I take it personally, essentially, is what I'm saying. You didn't just do that, you did it to me. And when you are happy, you're not just happy, you're happy for me. Would a parent say this out loud? Not usually, but you might be surprised at some of the things that slip out of our mouths. Like I hear often from parents things like, oh, my kid trashed their room right after I cleaned it up. They obviously have no respect for me. Well, it probably has nothing to do with you. But of course, if you're codependent, you're going to see and relate to your child's behavior as existing in relation to you, as existing to either fill that hole inside of you or hurt that hole inside of you, kind of poke at that wound. When you don't clean your room or you trash your room after I cleaned it, that pokes at my wound instead of me being able to see it as like, that's a thing that you did. It doesn't mean anything. It's not good. It's not bad. It's not done to me. It's nothing. It has nothing to do with me at all. That's a very hard perspective for a codependent parent to adopt because codependency interrupts our ability to attune to our child. And how many times have you guys heard me talk about attunement? I talk about it so much. It's so annoying, I'm sure, because authoritative parenting is half attunement. Authoritative parenting has those two elements, attunement with our children and leadership with our children, meaning we have an emotional connection with our kids that's healthy, and we have the ability to discipline and have boundaries and create a container for our child. So literally, attunement is half of good parenting. And codependency interrupts our ability to attune to our child. Because what is attunement? Attunement is truly seeing our children without any veil, without any lens, without, fog getting in the way, without our own pain blinding us. Well, if we're in pain, that's a hard thing to do, right? You can't see your kid clearly. Codependency is a contortion of attunement. This is why we call it the fool's gold of love, because the codependent parent can't see beyond the need they unintentionally rely on their child to meet. That hole, that pain is so primal that we can't put it to the side. We really can't, because your sense of self, your sense of okayness in the world, that's really all that matters on a literally like survival, primal, lizard brain level. Your sense of safety and like, I'm okay, I'm not in danger. That's job number one. That's self-preservation right there. And if you don't have that sense, you can't put something else before that. That's like trying to, I don't know, build a bed from IKEA before you have oxygen to breathe. Like, obviously, the oxygen has to come first. So, you can see how this codependency gets in the way of our ability to attune. And since the child is missing out on that attunement, their sense of self suffers. And so now the cycle continues. Now they don't have that inner sense of okayness and they become codependent. Codependent parents raise codependent kids. Totally sadly, it's a tragic thing and it's completely accidental, but that's just what happens. So, this is why you hear me every week talk about doing our inner work. No matter how many other skills you adopt to serve your child, the most important thing you can do for them is to work at being emotionally healthy, is to understand to what degree are you codependent and then do something about that. It is possible. It takes work, but it's the most rewarding work you can do. So, when we continue to do that work, it makes us excellent parents and it makes us revolutionary parents. It makes us where the buck stops with generational cycles and generational trauma. So I want you to imagine right now if your mom's mom's mom had done this work that we're talking about doing right now. Imagine if your mom had been raised by, a non-codependent parent. And so your mom had your mom's mom even had a completely full, healthy, whole, satisfied, intact sense of self. And then they raised your grandmother. And then that grandmother raised your mom. And then that mom raised you. Can you imagine also if your child's child had you, a healthy, healed person who has done this work for yourself, as their ancestor? Imagine the ripple effects, the generational sort of spreading of this kind of mental health. So I really hope that something like this concept helps you to take action. And don't worry, I have not forgotten about my confession. Now that we've gone through this whole thing, I want to confess to you that I absolutely still have codependency issues. So I gave you this great example of the story between me and Mike and the pomegranates and how far Mike and I have come. And I would say that our relationship doesn't have zero codependency in it, but I mean, I'd say it's pretty darn low. And our marriage is healthy and stable and solid because of that. It's huge. But it wasn't always that way. We kind of had a little bit of a what I always say, like a decision moment, a fork in the road, where we actually split up for a while and then got back together. And one of the reasons why we were able to get back together is because we started doing this work in earnest. But my confession for you is where codependency is still extremely dominant and overpowering in my life. And that is between me and my mom, which makes perfect sense, right? Like, this separation wounding that causes codependency, it originates in our childhood. It originates in that first primal parent-child relationship. And so you can do all of this work to improve and heal and give yourself that sense of inner okayness. And I picture it almost as like this big nebulous blob that gets smaller and smaller and smaller and shrinks and shrinks and shrinks around the epicenter of the issue, which is your parent-child relationship, meaning the relationship you had with your parent or parents. And that relationship in my life is still extremely challenging for me. And I if I had to put money down, I would say it probably always will be. And a great example is, just recently, my Mike and I had to have, had to confront change that we were going to make in the way that our family does summertime and stuff like that. It doesn't matter all the details, but it was something that I knew we had to do. I spent the entire summer fretting about how we were going to do it and when we were going to do it. I simultaneously wished we had already done it, but was dreading doing it. It was really, really stressful for me. And ultimately, I wound up soliciting help from my support people, especially my husband, to help me do that. Now, why on earth? And if you knew me, or if you already know me, it'll probably be hard for you to imagine that I struggle to set boundaries or tell it like it is, or be a straight shooter or draw a line in the sand with anybody. And you would be right with every relationship on this planet except the one that I have with my mom. And I become this terrifying, pearl clutching, hand wringing, fretting person about any sort of moment where I might say something and my mom will have negative emotions about it. It's torture for me. And it still is. And I don't know if it will ever change. And I'm getting emotional just talking about it. So we're going to wrap up that confession for you. So the reason why I chose that confession is for you to see that, like, just because I haven't 100% gotten there yet, and I probably never will, this is a never ending work that I'll take to my grave. It doesn't mean that doing the work hasn't completely transformed me as a wife and a mother. And my relationship with my husband is 180 degrees. I was about to say 90 degrees. I'm like, well, that's not exactly what I meant. 180 degrees different than it was when we first got married. And my mothering, my parenting has completely transcended anything that my parents or my parents' parents or my parents' parents' parents were ever capable of providing for their children. And I am really grounded and solid in my knowledge that, I have absolutely parented my children 180 degrees differently than I was parented. And I would say even 180 degrees differently than I started out parenting them. So perfection is not the goal. It is not required. Completely healing yourself to 100% wholeness and is not even possible, I don't think, but also definitely not necessary. What matters is the pursuit. And I will never give up on trying to, get there or get closer to being there. But at the same time, I know that what I have done already has made profound differences in my children's experience. And I hope that I have started a whole new generational cycle in our family where my kids enter the world as much more healed adults than I did. And that means that they already have like light years of head start on their work, which means that as they become parents, they will also continue their work and get even further along and give their children even more amazing childhoods than I gave them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the topic of codependency, I think it's inextricably linked to the topic of generational cycles and generational trauma. And I hope that gives you a sense about codependency. I hope it gives you a sense of purpose in your own work and pursuits. And I hope that you'll reach out to me and bring me aboard in your team of support that helps you get there. And if that feels right to you, set up that free discovery call with me today. And I can't wait to talk to you soon and hear all about what your journey is and where you're headed. Have a great week, everybody. And I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.
The episode is over, but there's more waiting for you. You can grab my free workbook, Getting Kids to Listen the First Time, that walks you through the fundamental principles I teach all of my clients and applies them to this very universal parenting challenge. So if you're sick of repeating yourself all day long or just want to learn more about my style, you'll definitely want to go to bit.ly/kidswholisten. And if you're ready to work with me, let's meet. Set up a free call at bit.ly/Kaplan call, and let's create an action plan that gets you exactly where you want to go. And of course, links to all this goodness are in the show notes. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you next time.